Bungie devs are coming out and exposing the truth about Marathon behind closed doors and giving us the details of just how low the employee morale is right now. I mean, the morale in the studio right now is so bad, it's probably been nerfed worse than Stasis post Beyond Light. Let's jump into it. New report reveals Bungie leadership ignored Marathon developer concerns for years. Yikes. A new report from Paul Tassi gives us a clear picture of what's been really happening behind the scenes at Bungie. According to Tassi's sources, developers at Bungie have been voicing concerns about Marathon's core direction for at least 5 years. You mean like since the conception of this game? Like since the beginning practically? I think this game goes back 6 years now. So you're telling me that Bungie devs were sitting around a table talking about this game in the first year and being like, yeah, I don't know if an extraction shooter's a good idea, Joe. And they said, nah, people will love it. Don't worry, we got this. Many repeatedly stressed that the game needed a PvE, player versus environment, component. You don't say. I mean, it's not like you have a massive Destiny 2 audience that loves PvE. It'd be a pretty easy sell to get them to come over and play your game, especially during the downtimes when Destiny 2 is a little bit dry, but that's not a very good strategy according to these geniuses. Senior Bungie leadership, described by some as the good old boy group, often brush off these warnings and requests. Who the hell are these good old boys, and why don't we get them the fuck out of there, all right? Because if you're telling me that people actually suggested that a new PvE game would be a terrible idea when you've done nothing but develop a primarily PvE game for 10 years to an immense amount of success that warranted you a $3.6 billion buyout, this has to be one of the stupidest ideas ever. Marathon was originally pitched by higher up good old boy Bungie leadership, and as far back as 5 years ago, devs were telling them what would and wouldn't work and were often ignored. Now, we've heard a similar sentiment to this towards Destiny 2 as well. People were saying that they were advocating for player housing for many, many years within the studio. A lot of those developers now being laid off. I think a lot of us can agree that player housing in Destiny 2 would be incredible. I'm sure it's something that will happen in the future, but at this stage in time, I feel like Destiny 2 should have it already. And that's not to say that player housing solves all of Destiny 2's problems by any means, but it's just a feature that would work perfectly for this game, and it's something that former Bungie and former Destiny 2 developers said that they advocated so hard for and never got to see it. Even like we still, to this day, we've never heard Bungie mention or even hint at something like that happening. Many have said previously that it needed to have some sort of PvE component. The report reads, in a recent interview with Games Radar, Marathon game director Joe Ziegler didn't hold back about the game's direction. He made it clear that Marathon isn't aiming to please everyone, especially those looking for a PvE only experience. Which, to be fair, if you are trying to acquire an entirely new audience like what Bungie is trying to do here, then going the PvP only or PvP specialist route is probably the right play because, you know, Destiny 2 players were mostly playing PvE. They're going to try and build a whole new audience. The problem with that is that if you're trying to build a PvP audience in the extraction shooter genre, you should at least appeal then to the extraction shooter audience, which Marathon has done horribly. Extraction shooter players are not interested in this game. Destiny 2 players are not interested in this game. It has no PvE experience. Let's continue now. His quote says, I think if you are only looking for PvE experiences, definitely Marathon is not the game for you, Ziegler said. We are very comfortable saying, yeah, this isn't a game for everybody. This might be the first ever game for no one, though. This is a game for if you like PvP experiences, especially in sandbox spaces, then this is probably something you're going to enjoy. The report also reveals that Bungie's original marketing plan for Marathon, which included a new trailer and the launch of pre-orders in June, was scrapped earlier this month. Oh yeah, there's a delay coming. There's an inevitable delay coming to Marathon. Let's not make any mistake of it, right? Along with that, Bungie may now roll out a series of public playtests instead of a single open beta, though those details aren't finalized yet. Other recent details include the price, which the Game Post reported last year would be $40, so not the premium price of $60, and not the extra Microsoft $80. We're going for the Concord 40. And as a couple of weeks ago, that's still the plan. While there hasn't been any official talk of a delay yet, all the ongoing changes and behind the scenes drama have a lot of people wondering if it might actually happen, which I have mixed emotions on this one, because while I do think that a delay will help games that actually stand a chance of being successful, Marathon may not necessarily be in that category. And so if you do delay it, you could just delay the inevitable, right? And that could end up burning Bungie even more money. Right now, Bungie is sitting there thinking to themselves, like, you know, if we can it now, or if we can it shortly after launch, we can go up to Pete and say, you know, hey boss, we only cost you $60 million, like the joke we talked about. Instead, if we delay it, then it's going to be going up to them and saying, hey boss, we only burned $100 million with this one, you know, and that's not going to make Papa Sony happy. Okay, Papa Sony is not going to be happy about burning another 100 mil. They just burnt 400 million on Concord and laid off the entire team. Like, they closed the doors on the studio, and that is where Marathon is heading if they're not able to make some drastic changes and turn the narrative around for this game. But apparently it gets worse than that, because we have several Bungie devs that are currently in studio talking about the current mood and the temperature of the room. Obviously, it's a little bit awkward in there, right? The company just got exposed for one of the biggest art scandals in game development history. There's obviously going to be some tension in the room, right? Oh, what I would do to be a fly on the wall and listen to the conversations going on right now. And thankfully, that's not something that I have to imagine too much, because Paul Tassi has been conducting various interviews, talking to current Bungie devs and former, and breaking down all of the spicy details here. We got the public explanation for the art theft. One ex-employee taking things in 2020 is the same one being given internally at Bungie among the rank and file. So this happened, this went down in 2020. So you had 5 years to do a Google reverse image search, and we didn't pull that off. The next point reads, Sony and Bungie legal are now sorting through this, and there is unlikely to be any much new information as all of this continues to unfold. Obviously, they're going to keep their lips shut tight, and they're not going to be able to talk about Marathon too much until they get this all passed through, until they scrub all of the assets and make sure that there's no other stolen bits. And it's probably going to be tough, because when you actually look through Marathon, there's all this little like cryptic words and lettering and everything on every little corner of every building, inside every little part. I mean, the process of scrubbing this is going to be extremely expensive, which is almost why a delay will be a 100% necessity at this point in time. It is not clear how long an audit will take. Exactly. Like, well, there's no way they're going to have an exact timeline for this. This is going to be an expansive and extensive audit, because imagine if they make the Marathon servers go live once more after all of this, and they find that there's still more stolen assets. That would be so controversial and so bad for the PR of this game. We'll take assets to remove or find any more plagiarism, as it's an expansive process to have Bungie not even show any footage at all in its recent live stream. Gotcha. Of course, that's why they couldn't show anything in the recent live stream. Morale is in free fall across all departments, and the vibes have never been worse. I can imagine the vibes are probably very low right now. Everyone's walking with their head down inside the studio like, man, this is rough. Bungie has had, by comparison to some of the other gaming studios out there, a decent track record. They haven't had the worst reputation, okay? They're no Activision Blizzard out there, all right? But all in all, the reputation was decent before this, okay? This is not a good look for them, right? Everyone has the same concerns about what happens to Bungie as a studio if Marathon bombs, which is something they absolutely cannot afford. Well, don't worry, I will tell you exactly what happens. When Marathon bombs, they will have to lay off those employees. That will be a massive layoff. We're talking about 300 employees currently working on Marathon. And Sony, they're not going to want those employees to come over and ruin Destiny 2 in any way. There's 550 employees working on Destiny 2 currently. And after Marathon bombs and the project is closed, they're going to shut the doors on that completely. And Sony will complete its takeover of Bungie, and they will assume all of the creative direction for that game in its future. And will that be a good thing or a bad thing? Only time will tell. But that is, at this stage in time, the only outcome that is reasonable to assume, okay? Unless, like, a miracle happens, all right? Unless an actual traveler drops out of the sky and bestows light powers on Bungie's studio, it is very unlikely that they're able to change that narrative from being a reality. There are not even hints or jokes about a delay from the September release date internally. They're sticking to it, and I think that they're kind of being pressured to that by Sony due to them having 6 years of development. And obviously it's very costly, right? You have to pay all of those developers, 300 developers being paid handsome salaries for 6 years, right? That adds up very quickly. I looked up the average salary of a game dev in the United States and it says $108,000. That's incredible. Apparently we got into the wrong fucking business, right? $108,000 a year. They are sitting pretty. But now imagine you have to pay, let's just round it down to 100,000 to 300 employees, right? That's $100,000 times 300 employees for 6 years, and it comes out to $180 million, right? So this is about half the cost of Concord's budget, right? Concord cost Sony approximately $400 million. So Marathon, this is just an estimate, right, is roughly around the $180 million. That's just paying the salaries of the devs alone. And we rounded it down a little bit as well. So, you know, all in all, it's almost $200 million, let's say. $200 million potentially invested into Marathon at this point in time. So yes, Papa Sony does not want you to get away with another delay, which would potentially burn even more millions of dollars, right? With that said, it is entirely possible, if not likely, these conversations are happening privately between higher up Sony and Bungie leadership. It's unclear what the plan is to launch the game in a now actively hostile environment just a few months from now, or how to turn that around. I don't know how they're going to do it. I genuinely don't know how they're going to do it. If they do pull it off, this will be studied as the psyop of the century. Let me know what you think about the situation down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe with notifications on. Smash the like button for me. I'll see you in the next one. Later.